9 months down with 90 more eventful days to go in 2020. Who knew Oklahoma would be blasted with a rare October ice storm? Or that the reporter tasked with telling you about October, November, and December would find himself dealing with the coronavirus on a very personal level in November. Steve Shaw brings us home with a look back at the final 3 months of 2020.
The pandemic punched Oklahoma's all-important agricultural community as bad as it hurt everything else. Kelly Payne is president of the Oklahoma National Stockyards.
We're a barn that last year sold 415,000 head of cattle, and it's not uncommon for us to have 8 to 10,000 head a week, if not more. So what we had the first 2 weeks were 1,200 and 1,300 head runs, and we just didn't even know how to respond.
The Oklahoma State Fair was canceled, but the much-anticipated Junior Livestock Show in Tulsa went on as planned. More than 2,800 youngsters and their families participated, with social distancing, of course.
It gets real hot, you get nervous, you get sweaty in the show ring, so honestly it's kind of hard to breathe. But honestly, there's no really big change other than just having a mask.
You don't feel like you can be as close to everyone, and it's just not quite the same, but the people are still all great, and it's just been pretty great.
Also in October, nonprofits across the state dealt with the stark reality many funding sources had dried up, courtesy the COVID. Dustin Fisher runs Oklahoma City's Operation Christmas Train Set.
I know that this stuff is very important to families that have to watch every dollar right now. And the need for what I'm getting on the way of applications is 20 times what I can do this year.
A few weeks before Christmas, though, Fisher would learn he got a Christmas miracle and was able to provide 345 kids in 5 area communities with total Christmases. Later in the month, a COVID spike caused Canadian County to move into the red category in the state's alert system. 117 inmates and more than a dozen staff at the federal prison in El Reno tested positive. If the Sooner State didn't already have enough to deal with, the worst ice storm in decades blistered central Oklahoma on October 26th. Oklahoma City collected tree debris through the end of the year. On November 3rd, Election Day brought out more than half of the state's 2,250,000 registered voters. It was a record. While the presidency went into the hands of the Democratic Party, Stephanie Bice defeated incumbent Kendra Horn in the all-important 5th District congressional race.
I think it was a wake-up call in 2018 with the number of Democrat women that won elections in that election cycle. And so Republican conservative women realized that we had an opportunity to show that we're not just going to stand on the sidelines, that we're going to take action.
Then, 4 days after Election Day, yours truly was diagnosed with coronavirus. I picked it up election night.
Day 4 since being diagnosed. My symptoms are fever, cough, and constant sweating. But I can still taste.
Fortunately, I was over it in a week. However, ONR executive producer, anchor, and reporter Jason Doyle's 68-year-old mother, Donna, who tested positive a few weeks before I did, could not overcome the dreaded disease. She died peacefully in her sleep at Integris Baptist on Halloween.
What do you want people to know about your mom?
That my mom was one of the best people in the world when it comes to her kids. She put her family first. She loved her kids. She loved her grandkids. She lived a full life. I mean, she lived life unabashedly. And no matter what she faced, I mean, she had the rheumatoid arthritis, she had overweight, she had asthma, she was borderline diabetic, all these different things, but it never stopped her in life before COVID came along. And that last part was just what stopped a beautiful life short.
On November 9th, in-person learning resumed in the state's largest school districts.
What we've learned from around the world, from around the country, and including in the area around the fact that the virus does not appear to be spreading in schools.
On November 18th, a record 1,434 people were hospitalized with COVID-19 in Oklahoma. The state was averaging more than 2,800 cases a day.
A vaccine is on its way, but we need to buckle down until then. I know we're all getting tired, but this is really important. I need your help right now to flatten this curve.
In early December came word that 2 very effective COVID-19 vaccinations tested right here in Oklahoma will be available on December 14th. Oklahoma's initial allotment will be around 40,000 doses. Good news considering Oklahoma in December was averaging nearly 3,000 new cases a day. According to the White House COVID-19 Task Force, the Sooner State ranked third in COVID hospitalizations, behind only Maryland and Arkansas. The state of Oklahoma received nearly $1.6 billion in federal CARES Act funding nearly 10 months ago. By December 10th, at least $914 million of it had been spent. $1.2 billion is being allocated through Governor Stitt, with some of that money going directly to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma County, Tulsa County, and a special fund for education.
And so anybody can go to caresact.ok.gov and look on the transparency dashboard and see how those funds were spent.
$3 million in CARES Act money was doled out in $25,000 to $100,000 grants for worthy causes in arts and culture.
None of us anticipated a pandemic, and that means those budgets didn't have those funds budgeted for. So we know that those are really impacting these organizations. Many of them, which are nonprofits, they're trying to do mission-based work. And so the bottom line is really getting hit by the pandemic.
In mid-December, we learned Tulsa will be the first airport in the U.S. to offer COVID testing. It begins January 4th and will come with a charge, but travelers can submit for reimbursement to their health insurance companies. Then, on December 14th at Integris Baptist Hospital, emergency room nurse Hannah White made history when she became the first Oklahoman to receive the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine.
Try to keep back the tears right now because no one has to die alone. If we can just do it together, then this stops. With a simple thing like a vaccination that didn't even hurt, by the way.
9,750 doses arrived in Tulsa that same day.
I want to thank all Oklahomans who are continuing to take precautions to prevent the spread of COVID-19. It's critical that we all keep up our fight. It's going to take several months to get this vaccine out to everyone, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, so we've got to keep pushing hard.
Steve Shaw, the Oklahoma News Report.